Hello students. So today we have this lesson, Nelson Mandela, A Long Walk to Freedom. Now this is an extract from Nelson Mandela's biography where he talks about the historic day and his musings on various things related to the freedom struggle. If all of you remember, South Africa became a democratic nation in 1994 after 300 years of British rule. And Nelson Mandela became the first black president of the country. He was sworn in on 10th May 1994. And this inauguration ceremony, which he explains to us in this extract about how it was held in South Africa and how the world's dignitaries had attended his swearing-in ceremony as the president of the country. He is the first black president. So his experience, and he takes us back into the history of South Africa, how they were looked down and how they struggled, and how the whites and blacks were kept separate from each other, and the education system which was separate for white and black, the areas which were separated for whites and blacks, and how the blacks were discriminated, looked down, showing the difference that they are much lower than the whites, and how they were ill-treated in that way, and how they were bitterly looked down, and how these people retaliated, how they fought this racial discrimination. And after this long struggle, 300 years is not at all a joke, it's a very, very long time. So how the struggle which went on for such a long time and finally got success. Where they got freedom, they became democratic, and the first black president was sworn in 1994. So now this lesson, as I told you, is an extract from the biography of Nelson Mandela. That's the reason why you can see the author's name as Nelson Mandela himself. So Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela is his complete name. So let us learn what were the struggles and what was the feeling. See, when you overcome your struggle and when you finally achieve success, the feeling of achievement. So does this achievement, bring true happiness to everybody? What were the thoughts and feelings of Nelson Mandela? Is all about in this lesson. So let's move on. 10th May dawned bright and clear. For the past few days, I had been pleasantly besieged by dignitaries and world leaders who were coming to pay their respects before the inauguration. The inauguration would be the largest gathering ever of international leaders on South African soil. The ceremonies took place in the lovely sandstone amphitheatre formed by the Union Buildings in the Pretoria. For decades this had been the seat of white supremacy, and now it was a site of a rainbow gathering of different colors and nations for the installation of South Africa's first democratic, non-racial government. On that lovely autumn day, I was accompanied by daughter Zinani. On the podium, Mr. de Klerk was first sworn in as second deputy president. Then Thabo Mbeki was sworn in as first deputy president. When it was my turn, I pledged to obey and uphold the Constitution and to devote myself to the well-being of the Republic and its people. So here you can see Nelson Mandela narrating the entire sequence. So he says 10th May, as I told you, 1994 was the swearing ceremony of Nelson Mandela as the President of South Africa. And he says, how was the day? So he starts by explaining the day, Was it good and how was it? So the feeling. So he said the 10th May dawn, means the morning, the day dawned nice, bright and clear. And then he said, for the past few days I had pleasantly besieged by dignitaries and world leaders who were coming to pay their respects before the inauguration. So he had many dignitaries who were coming around. What's the meaning of besieged? Surrounded by, okay? So pleasantly surrounded by dignitaries and world leaders who were coming to pay their respects before the inauguration. So many world dignitaries, many leaders were coming in. Dignitaries are nothing but, the high-end leaders or the officials. So all of them were coming in and they were wishing Nelson Mandela for the success. And all this was done before the inauguration. Now, the inauguration would be the largest gathering ever of international leaders on South African soil. So now, this celebration or this swearing-in ceremony was the largest ever on South African soil, because South Africa was so long oppressed, where they were looked down as blacks. So this was the first time, ever there was such a big gathering by international leaders on the South African soil. Now the ceremonies took place in the lovely sandstone amphitheatre formed by the Union Buildings in Pretoria. So this is a place in South Africa, Pretoria, Union Building, all these are places in South Africa. So the ceremony took place over there, and he explains to us for decades, that means for hundreds of years, what happened. This had been the seat of white supremacy. So always over there, any meetings or any ceremonies that took place was always, taken over or was celebrated only by the white. White supremacy is nothing but the rulers who were whites. And now it was a site of a rainbow gathering of different colors and nations for the installation of South Africa's first democratic non-racial government. So he says, earlier it was only the supremacy or only the whites ruled over there, where they used to have meetings or it was only their domination. But now this day where Nelson Mandela is going to take his oath as a president of South Africa, he says now it looks so colorful. There's a rainbow gathering, with different people over there from many countries, so many delegates, so many dignitaries, so many leaders of different countries, and then his own people, the blacks, with all the joy and happiness over there to celebrate the freedom. And he says this government is going to be the first democratic and non-racial. What does he mean by non-racial here? Where there won't be any difference shown between the white and black, where they'll be treated equally, or this government will be treating everybody equally. No more suppression, no more struggle, no more differences shown between blacks and whites. Now on that lovely autumn day, I hope you all know what is autumn. It's a season. So during autumn the trees shed their leaves, and after autumn comes spring, where again they spring up with new leaves and flowers and it becomes colorful. So autumn is where many trees now all around they shed their leaves. So on that lovely autumn day, I was accompanied by my daughter Zinani. So Nelson Mandela was accompanied. So along with him, his daughter Zinani went for the swearing in. And then on the podium, Mr. De Klerk, so who all were, sworn in as the first deputy or second deputy was? The first deputy was Thabo Mbeki. The second deputy was Mr. De Klerk. And then after both of them took the swearing in, then it was the turn of Nelson Mandela. So when his turn came, what did he do? He pledged to obey and uphold the constitution and to devote himself to the well-being of the republic and his people. See, Nelson Mandela has seen the bitter part of the life. So obviously as a leader, when you see bad times, you will make sure that no person in your rule suffers in any way. So this was his firstmost priority. So let us see what was his words. To the assembled guests and the watching world, I said, today, all of us do, by our presence here, confer glory and hope to newborn liberty. After the experience of an extraordinary human disaster that lasted too long, must be born a society of which all humanity will be proud. We, who are outlaws not so long ago, have today been given the rare privilege to be host to the nations of the world on our own soil. We thank all our distinguished international guests for having come to take possession with the people of our country of what is, after all, a common victory for justice, for peace, for human dignity. We have at last achieved our political emancipation. We pledge ourselves to liberate all our people from the continuing bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, gender, and other discrimination. Never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another. The sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement. Let freedom reign. God bless Africa. So, Nelson Mandela, his speech, his words, you can make out. His yearning for people to live in peace, his yearning to see that everybody is happy and nobody is looked down by anybody else. So he says in his speech to the watching world, to all the guests assembled there, today, all of us, by our presence here, so he says, everybody who's over here, each and every person from different part of the world, every person from his own country, our presence here, all of them who are there, who have attended, confer glory and hope to newborn liberty. We look up, we are like, a symbol where this is the glory and hope for newborn liberty. Why does he say newborn liberty? Because so far, for 300 years, where the blacks were treated as the lower society or people with just looked down, where they were separated, where they were ill-treated, where they were not allowed to be themselves or as a normal person in the society. Today, they have come into this democratic government where they will have their own freedom. They can be like any other normal person. They can have their rights, they can have their freedom, and they will not be oppressed by anybody. So that's the reason why he says newborn liberty to the blacks, because they also can live in peace, in their own freedom, not being looked down or oppressed by anybody else in the society. Now, out of the experience of an extraordinary human disaster that lasted too long, so he says, even he has experienced this human disaster. He calls it a human disaster because one person being oppressed by the other is obviously inhuman. How can you ever look down on another human being just because he is of a different race? Isn't it? That is quite inhuman. How can you ill-treat another human being? Because at the end of the day, all of us are human beings, isn't it? And where we call ourselves human beings, we all are equal, but we look down on each other in the pretext of race, religion, or caste. So here, Nelson Mandela has experienced this human disaster where he was looked down, he was ill-treated and oppressed. The society of blacks were looked down, they suffered. And he said, which lasted too long, must be born in a society of which all humanity will be proud. So he said, after all the struggle, today we have this democratic government, we have this freedom. And we have to show to the society that humanity is proud. In what way? By living a life of respecting each other. So we have to show to the world that we can live in equality and make humanity proud. See, he doesn't tell here make blacks proud or make something else proud, make my government proud. What does he mean here? He says make humanity proud. See, you can make out with the wordings itself what he wants. He wants every human to live in peace, happiness, and love. So that is what he wants to achieve. You can see the speech itself, it is so very clear. His ideologies are so very simple. There is no malice in his words. Now we, who were outlaws not so long ago, have today been given the rare privilege to be host to the nations of the world on our own soil. So he says, outlaws, as I told you, outlaws are nothing but where you're treated as, not equal. You're looked down. It's like outcasted, how we do in India. See, here, even there in India, we have casteism, and then we have outcaste, where we look down on people belong to certain castes. And then they say, these people belong to this caste are not allowed to have these privileges. They cannot go into these things, or they cannot have these rights, and they have to, be looked down. They're even given separate, houses and where their societies, and they're not supposed to even, if you have gone into history books, you know that where they have the water, facilities separately for them. Their, living areas are different from the higher castes. The same way, here also, they were outlaws, where they were looked down, they were separated, oppressed, and they were not, even looked as a human being. They were only treated as outlaws, where you are lower than rest of them, And then here he says, where we are outlaws, he was also part of them, part of all that oppression, have today been given the rare privilege. Rare privilege where you have this, opportunity to be the host to the nations of the world on our own soil. So I have this opportunity, this rare opportunity where I was treated as an oppressed, and today I can just look into the nations of the world, and where I'm a host, where I'm welcoming people, where I am taking care of all the nations of the world today who have come today to participate in this beautiful celebration. And he says, we thank all our distinct. He is not saying I, he says we. See, look at every word he says. He is not mentioning he himself. So he says, we thank all our distinguished international guests for having come to take position with people of our country of what is, after all, a common victory for justice, peace, and human dignity. So he says, we, the people here, we thank all the distinguished, international distinguished, all the special, or, all the dignitaries over there, the high-end dignitaries and the leaders have come there. So we call them distinguished. So international guests for having come to take position with the people of our country of what is, after all, a common victory for peace, justice, and human dignity. So he says, who have come, all of you who have come here, I think each one of us own. Possession is to own. Okay. So he says, we, all of us take this possession of what? Of people of our country. In what way he says? We own the people of our country, which means he's trying to say that this victory, which all of us have come to participate here, is a common victory. So he is relating it to the victory in general, to the whole world. Their victory is an example, or is a ray of hope to people who are still suffering under somebody's rule, or under somebody's, looking down as them as an outlaw. So he says this is a ray of hope for all other people in the world, that this can be a victory for justice, for peace, and human dignity. Do you understand? So our victory is a victory for people, where you will no longer be oppressed and where humanity can have justice, peace, and respect for each other. So we have at last achieved our political emancipation. We pledge ourselves to liberate all our people from the continuing bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, gender, and other discrimination. Never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience oppression of one by another. So he says, we have achieved our political emancipation. What is the emancipation? Where they have got freedom from their bondage. Understand, where they were looked down as slaves or the outcasts or the outlaws, and now today they have achieved even their political freedom. And they say, we pledge ourselves to liberate all our people from the continuing bondage of poverty. So he says, we will continue to liberate, to free people, free all as people if they are suffering anywhere in any part of the world, where we will continue this, this freedom, where we will not anymore allow our own people to suffer this way. We will make sure that they are not under this bondage of poverty or deprivation. Deprivation is nothing but where you know you are denied of considering as a person in the society. You are looked down of privileges of your own rights as a human being in the society. So you say this is not for you. You have to go into a separate thing. So all these where you're deprived, you're not allowed to have equal rights. So he says all people who are suffering. Poverty is where you don't have money, you're living in bad conditions, that is poverty. Who are poor. Deprivation, you're looked down, you're not treated equally. Suffering, yes, suffering, people who are suffering due to various reasons, gender and other discrimination, where you're treated differently. So he says all these people who all are suffering, I pledge, that means I promise to liberate, to free all the people who are still under these sufferings. And he says, never, never, and never again, I will never allow any time again this land to experience any oppression one by another. So he says, never again in South Africa, I will make sure that people are not under the oppression where one dominates the other or one is under the other. Everybody will live equally. Never anybody will look down on another or have authority or dominate the other person. Each one will have a life of equality, respecting each other. And he says, the sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement. So he says, this is such a glorious achievement. I think the sun has never set on such a great, joyful human achievement that we have today. And he says, let freedom reign, God bless Africa. So he says, let freedom always live or flourish in our land, and he blesses the country. A few moments later, we all lifted our eyes in awe as a spectacular array of South African jets, helicopters and troop carriers rode in perfect formation over the Union buildings. It was not only a display of pinpoint precision and military force, but a demonstration of military's loyalty to democracy, to a new government that had been freely and fairly elected. Only moments before, the highest general of South African Defence Force and police, their chests bedecked with ribbons and medals from days gone by, saluted me and pledged their loyalty. I was not unmindful of the fact that not so many years before they would have saluted but arrested me. Finally, a chevron of Impala jets left a smoke trail of the black, green, red, blue and gold of the new South African flag. The day was symbolized for me by the playing of our two national anthems and the vision of white singing, the Nkosi Sikelel' Afrika, and black singing Des Them, the old anthem of the Republic. Although that day neither group knew the lyrics of the anthem they once despised, they would soon know the words by heart. So here we can see him explaining the entire procedure or how he felt while the celebrations were going on. So he says, after all this, a few moments later, what happened? We all lifted our eyes in awe. In awe is nothing but where, in appreciation and joy, you look up. And where they were looking to the sky at the spectacular array of, where all of like even on Republic Day or on swearing in ceremonies, you have the different, the armies and, the jets and all showing their, paying their respects. So the same way, the South African jets, helicopters and troop carriers, they rode in perfect formation over the Union building. So all these also they rode over the sky in perfect formation over the Union buildings. So as this was taking place in the Union buildings, I hope you remember in the first slide. So all of them rode up, and then he says it was not only a display of pinpoint precision. So here, as all of you know, when there is a display in the sky, there is a very good coordination. You can never see any one helicopter or plane in a different order. They do it, so beautifully in synchronization and perfection. So precision is nothing but perfect, precision. So he's saying this display, which the jets or helicopters or whatever the troops have done, it was not just to showcase their talent or something like that, or to showcase the military forces very well talented, or they can present or display any sort of drill like this. But what he says this demonstration of the military's loyalty, this is nothing but the demonstration of military's loyalty to democracy. So they are showing all this as a sign of loyalty to democracy, to the new government, which is freely and fairly elected. So this is not a forced government. This is a government which has been freely and fairly elected by the people. So the military is also showing its loyalty towards the new democratic government. And he says, and just moments before, even the highest generals of the South African Defence Force and the police, all of them whose chests were bedecked. Bedecked is nothing but decorated, adorned with all ribbons. And when there's always a special celebration, you might have even seen a Republic celebration and all, or any other swearing in ceremonies, you see all the officers, with all the ribbons or medals or whatever is pinned up on the uniform. So the same way, all the higher generals and all of them also, where they were decked up well with ribbons and medals, from there they saluted him and pledged him loyalty, promised to be loyal. And then he says, I'm not unmindful of the fact that not so many. So he says, I am aware. He says, I am aware that few years ago, all these people might have not saluted me. Rather, they would have arrested me. Why? Because then it was not a democratic government and they were still the oppressed. So it's a part of the society and they were looked down. Now, finally, a chevron of Impala jets left a smoke trail of the black, red, green, blue and gold of the new South African flag. And then he demonstrates how the jets, the Impala jets. Now, chevron is something like a shape of a V, but an inverted V. So these jets were in such a formation and they were flying with what trails of smoke. Trail is nothing but where you leave like a sign of smoke. So even you might have seen, again I give you the example of a Republic Day because that's what is like very, very related to all of you kids, because you keep watching it every year. So how when the flights fly up in the sky, they leave the trails of a flag with white and green and orange smoke. So the same way, now the South African flag has how many colors? It has black, red, green, blue and gold. Now the day was symbolized for me by the playing of our two national anthems and the vision of white singing Nkosi Sikelel' Afrika and black singing There's Them, the old anthem of the Republic. So he says that day also what was symbolized? Two national anthems were sung. one of the whites and the other of the blacks. And he says this national anthem was the old anthem of the republic. And he says, although the day neither the group knew the lyrics, so neither of the groups knew the lyrics, the words of the anthem. They once despised, you don't like, you hate it or you detest singing it. But today they were singing that and they didn't know the words properly. But he says, I would make sure that they know the words by heart very soon. On the day of the inauguration, I was overwhelmed with the sense of history. In the first decade of the 20th century, a few years after the bitter Anglo-Boer War, and before my own birth, the white-skinned people of South Africa patched up their difference and erected a system of racial domination against the dark-skinned people of their own land. So here, he said, he was overjoyed with a sense of history. Why was he overjoyed with a sense of history? Because he says, initially in the first decade of 20th century, which was a few years ago, and this was when the bitter Anglo-Boer War took place, and before his own birth, which is before Nelson Mandela's birth, there was this thing that happened. What happened? The white-skinned people of South Africa patched up their difference and erected a system of racial domination against the dark-skinned people of their own land. So the white-skinned people of South Africa, what did they do? They said, okay, fine. Differences in what way they created was, since we are the white, we will be dominating the dark-skinned people of South Africa. So they created, or they erected, that's what he says, they created a racial domination where the whites were dominating the blacks in their own land. So this is what happened at that time. And this structure they created formed the basis of one of the harshest, most inhuman societies the world has ever known. So this thing, what they have created, the domination, the racial domination that they created at that point of time has created one of the most harshest, cruel, inhuman, where I think if you have ever read history books, you can see how the blacks were treated by the whites. Really bad. They were not even treated like a human. Worse, even much more worse than an animal. Probably you would treat your pet much more well, but they were treated much more worse than an animal also, a pet animal also. They were sold as slaves. They were auctioned in the market, where the blacks were tied up. As you see in the market, the chickens in the cage and all sort of thing. The same way, in those days, the blacks were, tied up. Their hands and legs used to be tied up, and then they used to be made to stand in the market, and they were auctioned. So whoever would pay more money, the blacks were given to those whites, and for what? To be treated as slaves. They were like made to do anything and everything by them. Most inhuman acts. It was really bad. I don't think any human would ever think of such things. But this is what was the reality, the suffering by the black. The most worst days of their land. And he says the society or the world would have ever known. It was really bad time. And now in the last decade of the 20th century and my own 8th decade as a man, that system had been overturned forever and replaced by one that recognized the rights and freedom of all people, regardless of the color of their skin. So he's telling us here that the world which has seen the most harshest and inhuman thing which has been created by treating the blacks as criminals, by treating them much more worse than a normal creature. So here he says, now in the last decade of 20th century, my own 8th decade. Now 8th decade over here is where Nelson Mandela is in his 70s, the age of 70s. Okay, is related as 8th decade. That's how you tell it. So instead of telling that I'm 70s, You can also say that eighth decade. So eighth decade is nothing but where it relates the age of a person who is between 70 to 79. Okay. So he says in his eighth decade as a man, that system had been overturned forever. So this system, what system? The system of discrimination has been overturned. Overturned where it has been changed forever. In what way? Where the rights and freedom of all people, regardless of the color of the skin, are recognized. So where every person, no matter whether they are black or white or whatever, every person has to have equal right and freedom in the society. Nobody will be discriminated, nobody will be ill-treated, nobody will be looked down as criminals. Now that day had come about through the unimaginable sacrifice of thousands of my people whose suffering and courage can never be counted or repaid. I felt that day, as I have on so many other days, that I was simply the sum of all those African patriots who had gone before me. That long and noble line ended and now began again with me. I was pained that I was not able to thank them and that they were not able to see what their sacrifice had wrought. So now what had happened? That day had become about to the unimaginable sacrifice of thousands of people. Now which day is he talking about? Where in you know in the days where many leaders, many leaders, like as you know, even in the Indian freedom struggle, there were many countless people who had sacrificed their lives. So it was not only the leaders but also the common man, right from men, women and children who had sacrificed their life to the freedom what we have got today and what we are enjoying today. The same way, through the unimaginable sacrifice of thousands of people who suffered and whose courage can never be counted or repaid. Why is he saying it cannot be counted or repaid? Because they have laid down their lives. Laid down their lives for whom? For the future generation. Are you able to understand? Even, see, for our country's freedom, there were many people who laid down their lives. Do you think they died for themselves? No, it was for us, whom we don't even know, we don't even recognize. But they were so selfless that they laid down their lives. They died for the future generation of the people, where at least the future can have freedom. They can live in peace, prosperity, and happiness. Children, today's society has become so selfish. We don't even think of our own sometimes. You are so self-centered nowadays. The society has become so narrow-minded that they are thinking only about they themselves. They have become so immune to the pain of others. It is really sad. If only all the people in those days, few years ago, had ever thought, why should I struggle? Why should I give my life for somebody whom I don't even know, or for some outsider, or for some future generation who will not even know who I am? If only they would have thought that way, do you think all of us would have been enjoying the freedom today? Isn't it? I mean, it's something to ponder about, to think about. Why have we become like this? Why are we not even thinking of the trouble, of the sacrifice, of the struggle of other people? Today in society, there are many people who are struggling. Many. Are we thinking of that? Are we even having a consideration towards that? So it's very important. I don't think we have to become so selfless, so selfish that we forget to at least help our own mankind in whatever way we can. But the society is totally diverting itself. Totally. You are not allowed to think about others. But it is never too late to change. If only the common man in those days, years ago, could bring such a huge change for us today by laying down their lives. Don't you think we can do that? We can change ourselves. We can think, consider for people around. This is very important. I think being selfish is not being human. Because when you don't understand the pain of others, when you don't look at a person as your own, that is where destruction of the society starts. It's very important to support each other, to stand for each other, to understand each other's pain. allow nobody to take advantage, but to at least be a good human being, to know that every person should be respected as a person. So this is very, very important. I think what we get to learn from history is many people died for us so that we could enjoy our lives today. They were not selfish, they were not greedy, they were totally a different aspect where they only worried or only cared for the people who are ahead of them, and they only thought, let them have peace and freedom. I think all of us have to learn this. This is something which is very, very great, very important. If only we could think of each other, if only we could value each other, the society would be a better place to live in. I think during the lockdown, you have seen many people who were helping the migrant workers. They were, distributing food and uh, medicines and helping them. So the society has to change. It's not that you have a phase and it's gone and again you become selfish. No, I think we have to always be this feeling of mankind where we have to be kind to each other, understand, not just at some point of time where you feel, okay, the migrant workers are going, so now let us be kind. No, it's not like that. It's to every person, even in your home or in your neighborhood or in the society or everywhere. So it's not just a phase. You have to be kind, you have to be selfless, or at least value each other in every day of life. You have to practice this. It has to become, a part of your life. Not that it just comes out at a moment and then again you get back into your shell. So as kids, as you are growing up into young men and women in future, you can bring a change. We all can bring a change by being kind to each other, by being understanding, by being selfless. This is very, very important. So let's get back into the lesson now. So here he says there are many people, thousands of people who sacrifice their life for what? For the freedom, to help people come out of this bondage. Then he says, Nelson Mandela says, I felt that day, as I have so many other days, that I was simply the sum of all those African patriots who had gone before me. So he says, all the people who had died before me, all the patriots who laid down their lives for the country. I think I'm just a sum of all of them, you know. And then he says, the long and noble line ended and now began again with me. So he says, so many of them have died. All the great leaders, all the kind leaders who only thought of people, who just laid down their lives, their family, they sacrificed everything that they had. Now it is my turn. Now again it's beginning with me. I think I have to do something. So he says, I was pained that I was not able to thank them and that they were not able to see what their sacrifice has brought. So he says, today, as I fought and as I have brought this change and as I have a democratic country today in Africa, where people will be living in peace and happiness, I feel really bad that I couldn't thank them, because it is not just my struggle alone. They had been fighting, they have been sacrificing, they have been doing this continuous struggle from years together, and today it is because of all their struggle that I am able to do something and I have brought the freedom today. It is not that I have done it alone, but I feel bad that I'm not able to thank them and they are not able to see that their struggle has brought such glorious result. What is that? Finally, everybody will live in equality, peace and freedom. So now the policy of apathy created a deep and lasting wound in my country and my people. All of us will spend many years, if not generation, recovering from that profound hurt. So he says, all of you know what is apathy. You have that in social. Apathy is where the blacks and whites are, looked up, had these differences, and the blacks are looked down by the white. That is apathy. Okay, the racial discrimination. Now in this discrimination, what happened in apartheid, as I told you earlier, the blacks were looked down, they were treated as criminals, they were treated as outlaws, not as a normal, even as a normal human being, they were treated as slaves, much more worse than a slave actually. So he says, this thing, this policy of apartheid
has created a long-lasting, deep wound in the country and in the people, because the way they were treated, I think it's just going to last for generations, because it has got such a deep wound. Profound is where? Deep within. The hurt is deep within, and it's going to take years. Generation is, it's not going to, people are not going to forget it so quickly, the suffering that they had undergone. It is surely going to take years, many generations. It's going to take where, for generations, people will have to will have in their mind, because it's rooted so much how badly the blacks were treated. So it's not going to be an easy recovery at all. But the decades of oppression and brutality had another unintended effect, and that was it produced Oliver Tambos, the Walter Cecilus, the Chief Lutless, the Yusuf Dadus, the Bram Fishers, the Robert Sockwebs at our time. Men of such extraordinary courage, wisdom, and generosity that their like may never be known again. So he says, one thing what apartheid has brought was a deep hurt within the blacks and the society, where they can not recover for generations, which means they are hurt within deeply. But another thing what it has brought, that is this decades, this years of oppression, treating them brutally, means really badly, where they were oppressed, treated so bad, without any freedom, without their own rights. This has brought another effect, unintended, where unintended is where it has brought a different outlook of it, which was not intentional, it was not planned. See, sometimes when you're oppressed, a revolution starts. So that is what it was. So some people who fought for it, some people were hurt, they were suffering the hurt, but there were few people who wanted to overcome that, who wanted to fight back, and they were the leaders. The names are given there, where they had extraordinary courage to fight. They had wisdom, they were wise people, they're generous people. Why generous? Because they could lay down their lives, they sacrificed their life for the freedom of the society in South Africa. So there were two things which came out, one suffering, another thing where you could fight for the rights of the people by such leaders. Perhaps it requires such depths of oppression to create such heights of character. So he says, maybe that depth of oppression has created that height of character. What height of character? Where you could just fight back and sacrifice your life. It does not come just like that. Maybe all this has just brought them, I have to do something for the society and my people. My country is rich in the minerals and gems that lie beneath its soil, but I have always known that its greatest wealth is its people, finer and truer than the purest diamond. So he says here, see, he says, my country is rich with minerals and gems. They're precious minerals and gems underneath the soil, in the soil. But he says, I think more than these precious minerals or gems which are in the soil, I think I have to count on the people. The greatest people, the greatest wealth are the leaders or the people who have fought for the country or laid down their lives. They are much more finer and truer than the purest diamonds. So he says, I value these people who have fought for the country, who have laid down their lives for the freedom of their country, who have fought for the human rights, who wanted people to live in peace, equality, and freedom. I think these people are much more precious to me, and they are much truer and finer than these gems or these diamonds which are in my country. It is from these comrades in the struggle that I learned the meaning of courage. Time and again I have seen men and women risk and give their lives for an idea. I have seen men stand up to attacks and torture without breaking, showing a strength and resilience that defies the imagination. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more natural to human heart than its opposite. Even the grimmest times in prison, when my comrades and I were pushed to our limits, I would see a glimmer of humanity in one of the guards, perhaps just for a second, but it was enough to reassure me and keep me going. Man's goodness is a flame that can be hidden but never extinguished. In life, every man has twin obligations: obligation to his family, to his parents, to his wife and children, and he has one obligation to his people, his community, his country. In a civil and human resilience, the ability to deal with any kind of hardship and recover from its effects, push to our limits, push to the last point, and ability to bear pain to society. Each man is able to fulfill those obligations according to his own inclination abilities. But in a country like South Africa, it was almost impossible for a man of my birth and color to fulfill both of those obligations. In South Africa, a man of color who attempted to live as a human being was punished and isolated. In South Africa, a man who tried to fulfill his duty to his people was inevitably ripped from his family and his home and was forced to live a life apart, a twilight existence of secrecy and rebellion. Now, here it is from these comrades. So, comrades are the fellow people who were in this struggle. So, what Nelson Mandela has learned is that this I have learned is courage from them. What has he learned? He has seen that time and again, men and women who risk their lives for the freedom of the country, who have struggled, who have fought, they have stood up for all the attacks, for all the tortures. They were treated brutally for fighting back, for fighting against the whites, for their own freedom. As they are fighting, they underwent lot of humility, lot of torture, lot of pain, lot of suffering. But all this, they had the strength to withstand, to fight against all this. Resilience is where you are able to withstand all this, and you're going ahead. And he says, see, the courage was not an absence of fear but triumph over it. So he says the courage is not the absence of fear but to overcome that. A brave man is not that who feels afraid. See, every person feels afraid, but who wins over? The person who conquers it, who overcomes the fear. So that is very, very important. You can live in fear, but when you overcome it, that's when you become victorious or successful. And then he says, see, nobody is born hating each other. I think as soon as a baby is born, a baby is not born with a mindset or with a thought process where he or she starts hating the other person. It is a society or which is training us, binding us into such things and making us feel hate each other. So he says nobody who is born hates another person due to color, skin, the skin color or the background or the religion, as caste, creed and all. I don't think any baby or any child is born like this, where or any person is born with the mindset of hating a person due to some particular reason, isn't it? It's a society which we live in brings all these unnecessary disruptive thoughts, creating a destruction among humanity and people. So he says people must learn to hate. Nelson Mandela says people must learn to hate. Now you must be wondering, why should people learn to hate? And if they hate, obviously they start fighting with each other. So what he is trying to tell is they must learn to hate what is wrong, what is not good for the society, what can bring destruction. People have to hate that, and that is when they can start to love each other. They can learn to come together naturally. See, when one person starts to hate the other person who is ill-treating the third person, when there are two people and one person is treating the other person in a very bad way for any reason, because they belong to a particular religion or they belong to a particular caste or creed or whatever. So when the third person is watching this and he hates this, what is happening, he says, no, this is not the right way. Let every human being be treated as a human equally with equal rights and freedom. I think that is when everybody can come together. They can stop all this. So he says people should hate. That is when everybody can come together naturally and live in love and affection, equality, brotherhood and peace. And then he says, in the tough times when Nelson Mandela was in the prison, during this freedom fight and all, he says in the prison when we underwent lot of struggle, lot of punishment and embarrassment and all that, he said among the guards I could see, for a moment I could see humanity in those guards. And at that moment it made me feel that there is humanity, and I think there is goodness in a man. because if there is no goodness, at least for a second, that person will not be kind to him. So he says, I have never lost hope. At least when I saw that for a moment, for a second, the guards also showed some goodness towards us. And he says, in life, every man has twin obligations. Obligations is nothing but where you're responsible, mandatory. You have to fulfill these two things in life. What are they? The first responsibility that you have is towards the family, parents, wife, and children. And what is the second responsibility or the obligation mandatory which you have to fulfill or take care is people, community, and country. So every person in this world has two obligation, one personal side, another society. So one is where you have to take care of your family, your parents, your wife and children and husband, all of that. And the second one is where you have to take care of the people, the community and the country. So you have both the responsibilities. So as a human being, I don't think you would ever do something which can create a disrupt in your family, which can create destruction, or which can create fights or differences in the family. I don't think you would ever try to do any such thing, isn't it? We make sure that our family is together, our family is living in peace and harmony, and everybody are happy, isn't it? We try our best. The same way, it is very important for us to make sure that our people in the society, whether it is in our neighborhood or in our community or society or in the country on the whole, all of us are making sure that everybody are living in peace. We are not creating any sort of destruction of peace in the society as well. So he says, in civil and human resilience, the ability to deal with any kind of hardship and recover from its effect, push to our limits, push to the last part of ability to bear pain in the society. So he says, I think this society, which when it was on the society platform and the humanity platform, what the suffering brings us to such a level where we are able to bear pain to such an extent that we want to help people who are suffering and get peace in the society. So he says, in a country like South Africa, it was almost impossible for a man of my birth and color to fulfill both of these obligations. So he says, in South Africa, where a person of my color, which color? Nelson Mandela was a black. So he says, a person of my birth, that means who was a black person, who was born as a black and who had this color black, he couldn't fulfill these obligations, where these twin obligations, as he mentioned, because you are first of all not treated as a human being, you are not allowed to be a normal person. So he can never ever be these two. And if any man even attempted to be like that, to live as a normal human being, he was punished, he was isolated, separated from the society. And if a man tried to fulfill his duty towards the people, so as a family, if you want to take care of family, you were thrown out. And if you want to do something for the society, what you will do? Obviously, for society, you will fight for their rights, for their freedom. So if you are again done that, you will be ripped off, which means torn apart from your family, from your home. You'll be either treated in a very brutal way, and you'll be put behind bars, or you'll be just harassed for what you are doing for the society. So any black could never fulfill these twin obligations. I did not in the beginning choose to place my people above my family, but in attempting to serve my people, I found that I was prevented from fulfilling my obligation as a son, a brother, a father, and husband. So he says, in the beginning, Nelson Mandela, he chose to place family more than the family. So he gave importance to people, to the society, then his family, in attempting to serve them. But he found that he was prevented from fulfilling any obligations as a son, brother, father, and husband. So as he gave importance to the society, here he was obstructed, or he couldn't fulfill his duties as a son, brother, father, and husband. I was not born with a hunger to be free. I was born free, free in every way that I could know. Free to run in the fields near my mother's hut, free to swim in the clear stream that ran through my village, free to roast mealies under the stars and ride the broad backs of slow-moving bulls. As long as I obeyed my father and abided by the customs of my tribe, I was not troubled by the laws of man or God. So here he says that he was not born with a hunger to be free. Hunger to be free? where his birth itself, when he was born, he was a child and all. There was no struggle where he didn't have freedom. He had freedom. He was born in a small village. See here, you can see in the corners of this sort of houses. So he was born in a small village. Nelson Mandela was born in a small village, and they were a tribe. So there was a small village where the houses were like huts. So he says, when I was born free. I could run everywhere in the fields. In my mother's hut, I was free to swim in the clear streams and roast mealies. Mealies are nothing but corn, okay? So I could roast the corn, on fire. You might see this on the road they sell, isn't it? The corn they roast and eat. So the same way, as a child, he could run, he could roast mealies under the stars. Under the stars means at night, okay? And then he could ride the road backs of slow moving bulls, where when the bulls are moving, they sit on that, isn't it? On the thing attached to it. So he said, as a kid, as a child, I had all the freedom. I enjoy my childhood. But as long as I obeyed my father and abided by the customs of my tribe, I was not troubled by laws of man or God. So he says, as long as I followed whatever my father said and whatever was a custom I had to follow, I obeyed abide is nothing but obeyed the customs of my tribe. I was not troubled by any laws of man or God. It was happy. It was only when I began to learn that my boyhood freedom was an illusion, when I discovered as a young man that my freedom had already been taken away from me, that I began to hunger for it. At first, as a student, I wanted freedom only for myself. The transitory freedom of being able to stay out at night, read what I please, go where I choose. Later, as a young man in Johannesburg, I yearned for the basic, honorable freedoms of achieving my potential, of earning my keep, of marrying and having a family. The freedom not to be obstructed in a lawful life. So here he says, as long as I was a kid and I obeyed whatever my father said, or I obeyed whatever the custom of my tribe, everything was fine. I never had any trouble from any person or by God. It is only when I grew up as a young man, as a teenager and as an early young man. So he found that all this was illusion. The freedom, what he felt was illusion. It was just an imagination. It was not true freedom. Why? Because as a student, he didn't have freedom for himself. He couldn't go wherever he want, read whatever he wants, sit wherever he wants. So it was totally different. If you can Google up and see, during the time where the blacks and whites are separated, or where they were shown differences, you can see that in those days, even a bench, in the park or somewhere, it was divided. It was written for whites and non-whites. So you can Google up and see. I mean, it was so pathetic, really pathetic, because they didn't have this freedom to sit wherever they want. Everything was marked. Everything was divided. They didn't have a life where they could normally go everywhere. Everything was marked. This is for whites and this is for non-whites. You cannot go here, you have to go only here. You have to stand here, you have to stand there. You cannot sit here, you have to sit here. So everything was just like, bounded. You just couldn't do or couldn't go wherever you want. So when he learned this, then he started having the hunger for freedom. Hunger for freedom, where he felt, why am I to live like this? I should have the freedom like everybody else. And that's where he started this. And then when he was in Johannesburg, that is where he was seeking for. Yearned means he wanted some basic and honorable freedom by achieving my potential of earning my keep, of marrying and having a family, the freedom not to be obstructed and lawful. So he said, when I was in Johannesburg, that is where I felt I have to have my own freedom, where I have my family and, where I have my lawful life. I'm not, put down by anything. I should live a normal life. But then slowly he saw that not only I was not free, but my brothers and sisters were not free. I saw that it was not just my freedom that was curtailed, but the freedom of everyone who looked like I did. That is when I joined the African National Congress, and that is when the hunger of my own freedom became the greater hunger for the freedom of my people. So, when Nelson Mandela saw that all this freedom which I thought is freedom is actually an imagination, I don't have any real freedom. And that is when he joined the African National Congress, and he even noticed, why did he join African National Congress? Because he saw that it was not he alone, but even the people around him, all the blacks, his sisters and brothers whom he calls, all the other blacks also were having the same suffering. And when he saw this, that It is not he alone, but everybody over there, all the blacks had the same suffering. He decided I have to do something and he joined the African National Congress. And that is when his hunger for freedom became the hunger, greater hunger for freedom by all the people. It was this desire for freedom of my people to live their lives with dignity and self-respect that animated my life, that transformed a frightened young man into a bold one, that drove a law-abiding attorney to become a criminal, that turned a family-loving husband into a man without a home, that forced a life-loving man to live like a monk. I am no more virtuous or self-sacrificing than the next man, but I found that I could not even enjoy the poor and limited freedoms that I was allowed when I knew my people were not free. Freedom is indivisible. The chains on any one of my people were the chains on all of them. The chains on all of my people were chains on me. I knew that the oppressor must be liberated just as surely as the oppressed. A man who takes away another man's freedom is a prisoner of hatred. He is locked behind the bars of prejudice and narrow-mindedness. I am not truly free if I am taking away someone else's freedom, just as surely as I am not free when my freedom is taken from me. The oppressed and the oppressor alike are robbed of their humanity. So as we can see here, he says that it was his desire that the freedom of his people to live their lives with dignity and self-respect, which means he wanted the blacks to live a valued life where they can have respect for their own life, where they can be treated as a normal human being than anything else that was going on at that point of time. That transformed this man, whom Nelson Mandela, who was a frightened young man, into a bold one. So this thought of Nelson Mandela to free his people, to help his people live in dignity and respect, made him transform into a bold man. And this person, Nelson Mandela, who was a law-abiding attorney, is a lawyer. Okay, so he who followed or obeyed law as a lawyer has become a criminal. And he who was a family-loving husband has turned him into a man without a home. And he who loved life was forced to live a life as a monk. So here Nelson Mandela explains how he had to sacrifice his life, how his life transformed totally just because he wanted to fight for the rights of his own people. How he just transformed himself from a frightened young man into a bold one. How he was law-abiding but had become a criminal just because he was supporting his own people by fighting back with the whites. How he became a criminal because he was fighting against them. And then how a loving husband who loved his family turned into a man who didn't have any home at all because he was thrown out. And then a person who loved life had become a monk. Why monk? Monk are people who sacrifice everything, all the worldly pleasures, their personal pleasures, their comforts, and they just come out in the society to live for the society. So here he says, Nelson Mandela says, I am not a virtuous or a self-sacrificing man than any other man next to me. So here he's being very humble and modest. He says, I am not a very good charactered person. I don't have very good values, or I'm not a very self-sacrificing person. I'm a very normal person like any other man who is with me. But here I just couldn't enjoy the freedom which I was having. What freedom? The very little freedom that they were having as blacks. He couldn't enjoy that because he knew that all the other blacks were treated really badly and they didn't have any freedom which the whites were enjoying. And he says freedom is indivisible. I mean, every person has to have freedom. It's not with, you are discriminated as because of the caste or because of the race or religion. Every person has a right to have his own freedom. So he says freedom is indivisible. The chains on any one of my people were chains on all of them. He says if any one person is having this chain of suppressment, of oppression, is a chain on everybody else. And the chain on everybody else is a chain on me. So if any one person, any one black is suffering, it is a suffering of everyone altogether, and eventually even my own suffering, where you can clearly understand that how much he cared for the blacks. Even if one person suffered, is a suffering of he himself. And he says, I knew that oppressor must be liberated just as surely as the oppressed. He says, see, the oppressor also must be liberated. Why he should be liberated? Because he who takes away the freedom of another man is a prisoner of hatred. He is locked behind the bars of prejudice and narrow-mindedness. See, when does a human being think of suppressing another human being? When he is narrow-minded, when he thinks, I am the only one great here, I am the only one who is superior above everybody. So, this man who thinks that he is superior or he is the only one better than others and who is proud about himself is a person who is locked in a cage, in a bar. You know, bars does means who is caged himself in a narrow-minded thinking, very, perspective of thinking where you don't even look at a broader sense of life. When the other person is a human being and you are a human being, why do you have to oppress somebody? Why do you have to look down on somebody? Because you have a mentality, a feeling that you are better or you are superior than the other human being, which is wrong. Because as human beings, all of us are equal. We don't have a right to oppress or suppress anybody else. Because all of us are human mankind. We are together, we are equal. So he says, a man who is oppressing the other, an oppressor also must be liberated, must be given freedom, because he has to come out of that cage, he has to come out of that narrow-mindedness, he has to open up and look at the world in a broader sense. He has to start respecting his fellow human being. And he says, I am not truly free if I am taking away someone else's freedom, just as surely as I am not free when my freedom is taken from me. So he says, I don't think I am free, because my freedom is taken away, and the other person also is not free because he is taking away my freedom. So nobody is free here. Nobody has freedom because each one is trying in their own struggle. One is trying to take away the freedom. One is trying to get freedom. So each one is struggling. So who is free? And nobody is free. Nobody is having freedom. And he says the oppressed and the oppressor alike are robbed of their humanity. So he says the oppressed and the oppressor. Oppressed is person who is suffering. Oppressor, person who is dominating. He says both of them are robbed of their humanity. Both of them don't have the humanity. Why? Because they don't have the value. One, the oppressed person who is oppressing doesn't value humanity, and the oppressed who is suffering is losing his privilege of humanity. So here both are robbed of their humanity. So he's very beautifully explains us. I mean, you can just see in his words how much they have suffered. How much they have suffered. I think every word that as Nelson Mandela has written in his autobiography and which we are learning today as a lesson is beautifully portrayed to each one of us. It explains how mankind suffered, how the blacks suffered under the whites, how they were treated badly, the suffering. I think we have to liberate our minds, we have to open up, because as a younger generation like you all, I think all of us have to learn to value humanity, to learn to respect each other as human beings. If we need a better society to live in, if we need to live in brotherhood and peace, we have to value each other as a human being. Forget about anything else and everything which the society has created today. We should have a better mentality, a better outlook of life, or else there is no point we being educated at this point of time. When we are learning so many things, if our mindset doesn't change, there is no point of learning all this. So being educated also means that we learn lessons from every experience. We learn lessons from the struggle of others. So this lesson is a true insight for all of us to be true human beings, to value each other, to value our freedom which we are enjoying today, because it is a sacrifice of innumerable people who were selfless, due to whom we are having a good life today. So, a beautiful lesson, a true insight into human and humanity and the value of humanity. So, we end the lesson here. And as your homework, please write the summary. Nelson Mandela lesson is a very important lesson. If you haven't understood, please listen to the presentation again and again, to the video again and again. It's very important. And why it is important? Because it truly speaks of the facts. It is history. We have to know what it is. So please listen thoroughly, write the summary, and the question to you for homework is how good it is to oppress another human being on the pretext of religion, race, caste, or creed. Do you think it is right to oppress another person, another human being, basing on any reason created by society? Is it right? So please write your views. And then, how can we make society a better place to live in, where humans or mankind can live in peace, equality, and brotherhood? What can we do? What can you as younger generation do? What do you think the government can do? So please write down your views on this until we meet you in the school in the regular physical classrooms. So please listen to this lesson again and again, answer the questions, and make sure you're doing your homework, because when the school reopens, I'm going to check all your homeworks. So don't think you can get away. I would love to see your homeworks, and it is mandatory that you do your homework. Okay? Take care. God bless. Thank you.